Hello, and welcome back to another Tracker video, where today I will be doing a totally normal Mun mission. So let's get started by launching this rocket into space. Here we go. We've got the original 3 on board on this totally normal Mun mission. So you can see Bob is screaming, Bill isn't particularly happy, Jebediah is very happy. We've got 36 seconds till booster burnout. Now this older version of the rocket has higher thrust to weight ratio, so I can pitch over a little quicker than I normally do. This is a modified version of the older rocket because there were a few glaring problems with it which I just couldn't stand. I'm using the older one because it doesn't have like a few hundred mods used in it, because I'm using a less modded version of Kerbal. There's booster separation. Let's see if the boosters crash into each other. They didn't crash into each other. So let's continue on to orbit on the first stage. So, pretty normal flight. I might have gone a little too high there. I need to go a bit more sideways for this to be a bit more efficient. But to be honest, I prefer going a bit too high because I don't like it when the plasma appears on the rocket before you've reached space. It just bugs me for some reason, so I do quite often take a lofted trajectory to avoid that. So we're nearly reaching space. We're about half of orbital velocity now. And we should be close to entering orbit. We'll probably be going to Minmus as well. Depends on how much time I have left afterwards. As this lander's Delta V does have enough Delta V capabilities to land on both Mun and Minmus. Not by design, but because it's like my first ever lander design. I must say the game is so much more responsive when it's not heavily modded, like on the monorail version. So we're in space. So looking at my staging, I'm supposed to separate both the fairing and the second stage at the same time. Waste some of that fuel. We'll extend the solar panels. And let's get this mission going. I guess we need to do this quickly, as I'd like to try and record this as quick as possible so I don't have to cut too much out of the video. Right, here we go. That's the maneuver to get into Kerbin orbit. Let's wait for it to point at the target vector. And here we go. Now this might be really loud, so you might not hear me when doing this burn, because I do vaguely remember this rocket, this second stage, being insanely loud because of the vernier engines on it. Which I think it's got like 3 verniers, or is it 4? It's 4 of them. That was probably really loud and you probably were not able to hear me there, because those vernier engines are extremely loud in stock Kerbal Space Program. But yeah, I don't really do space missions that often anymore. I would say I go to the Mun once in a blue moon. Like, I really don't go there very often anymore. I used to go there all the time, but I guess after playing this game for such a long time, I just wanted to do other things in the game, such as making trains. But we're revisiting the old style of Kerbal Space Program with my old rocket, a few mods, but the mods are just accessories. They're not affecting the mission in any way. I've set up the transmuner injection burn, prepared to be deafened by my engines again, which are probably going to be super loud. This is 1 minute and 15 seconds of this loud, obnoxious engine, or massive engines. I don't know why 7 years ago did it like that, but I did. And no, I wasn't 7 years old 7 years ago. I guess I was slurring my words a bit. Just over halfway through this burn. Coming up on main engine cutoff, if you can hear me. And main engine cutoff. We're on a crash course with the Mun. But of course there's no RCS on this. Yeah, I can see why I did the flight that way back in the day, where I would put it in a high orbit and then I'd lower it down. Have to turn the spacecraft around so I don't crash into the Mun. Gonna be going in a retrograde orbit by the looks of things. Now a prograde orbit. There we go. Make a maneuver. Capture. And let's go to the Mun. So I'm going to set that to maneuver. Here we are arriving at the Mun. Let's prepare to do this. Oh, I overshot a little bit with the maneuver. We'll still be able to capture though. It'll just be a bit of an asymmetrical orbit, which doesn't matter because this is not where I'm not going to be doing any rendezvous. This is a direct ascent mission, so no need for a precise orbit. That being said, my orbit is terrible. Right, I'm gonna time warp a bit round to about there, and I'm gonna perform a retrograde burn till my periapsis is just intersecting with the surface. So yeah, maybe about there I'll go for. Let's go down to the Mun to perform this landing. I'm gonna set that to radar altitude. Of course, the game is going to limit my time warping abilities unnecessarily. I'm gonna stop time warping now just because this takes a long time to turn around. This takes a very long time to turn, so I'm turning it now. Shouldn't need to burn just yet. I reckon around between 3,000 to 4,000 meters up we start burning. We will quick save now just in case that is too late. Right, about now. In 3, 2, 1, go! So I'm gonna take off most of my horizontal velocity with the upper stage of the rocket. And then I will separate the lander and land with the lander. The lander doesn't have particularly high thrust to weight ratio for a lander, so you have to use the upper stage to do most of the slowing down. So we're slowing down now, we should be able to separate soon. I'll separate at about 50 meters per second. Here we go. Lander separation. Looks like we might be coming down on relatively flat terrain here. Kerbals are all smiling. Let's think about slowing down as the thrust to weight ratio on this isn't particularly high. We don't want to crash. Of course, because this is like my first ever Mun lander design. Oh, there's the stage exploding. This is my first ever Mun lander design, so the thrust to weight ratio isn't very high. Oh man, been doing a suicide burn here. That was a sketchy landing. And we're sliding downhill. This lander was designed to be slammed down though, that's why it's got those big girders as landing legs. Now, you may be looking at the rover and notice it's perched on top. I didn't know how to deploy a rover back in the day, so I just put it on top of the lander and I would separate it and hope that it would land upright. Probably the most Kerbal way to do it. Yeah, the hatch says it's obstructed, but you can still get out. It's a bug. Right, I'm gonna put Jebediah in the rover seat. Gonna separate the rover and hope he doesn't get knocked out. He did get knocked out, so let's go and chase the rover. We won't be using the rover though, but it's good to get rid of that weight. Looks like we might not be recovering from this anyway. Yeah, we don't need the rover for this mission. We're just planting flags and taking screenshots. So I'm gonna extend the solar panels again, get the other Kerbals out for a picture, and plant the flag. Oh yeah, I forgot I don't have a easy vessel switch. You get so used to the mods, the game feels very weird without them. Let's get, of course, it says they're obstructed when they're really not obstructed. Bill is doing a few somersaults as he jumps off the lander. Let's bring him near Jebediah here. And let's get Bob out too. Let's not break the solar panel. That would be ideal. Right, let's line each other up so that I can actually take the picture while facing the lander. Man, I keep trying to press Alt and left click to try and switch to the Kerbal. Here comes the flag. There we go. We have landed on the Mun successfully. Take surface sample. The darker Midlands surface appears to be made of basaltic rocks. Oh, I like basaltic rocks. I have one right here. That's me tapping on it. They're volcanic rocks. Anyway, we've done the Mun stuff. Let's get back on the lander and fly to Minmus. Hey, Bill, don't overshoot the lander. We're meant to be making this a very quick mission. Yeah, the reason why it says the hatch is obstructed is because of that strut there. Oh, I nearly used Vessel Mover. You can see I don't play this game too seriously anymore with the fact that my mouse just went over to click on Vessel Mover. Though this is... I'm gonna try and play this as non-cheaty as possible. Anyway, we're ready for takeoff. Let's go. Let's go to Minmus. Kerbals are not too happy about leaving the Mun. But we have to visit Minmus too. So here we go. Off the surface we go towards Mun orbit. You can see this lander has an excess of fuel tanks. And you know how I was saying how uncheaty I was. Let me just look at my altitude, okay? Yeah, you know how I was saying how non-cheaty this is. I do have a lot of clipped tanks there, so this could still be considered cheating. Yeah, the reason why I was checking my altitude is because I thought I recognised this crater. I thought it was the lowest point on the Mun that I landed at on a video a couple of years ago. But I think that's a completely different location, I think. I can't actually remember where the lowest point on the Mun is. I know it's in sort of one of these medium craters in multiple overlapping craters, and it goes into the negative altitudes, like it's something like negative 300 meters. I landed at it in another video I did a couple of years ago. Maybe I'll post a link to that video on at the top of the screen. So we're about half of orbital velocity right now. There we go, we can level off now. We'll wait till my apoapsis is around 15 kilometers and then I will stop burning. Also, I don't think I took a screenshot. That doesn't matter because I'm filming this, so the video is like probably 30 screenshots per second. I don't actually know if it's 30 FPS. That's how professional I am. Anyway, let's put ourselves in Mun orbit. A much better orbit than before. And then I will plot a trajectory over to Minmus. Of course, they have this needless time warp limit. Very unnecessary. There we go, entering Mun orbit now. And let's think about going to Minmus. So, we want not an SOI change, we want a planetary transfer window. Apparently there's one in 3 days. So let's do a bit of time warping to get to this transfer window. I've always had problems with the stock Kerbal alarm clock. I've never had problems with the mod, but I've always had problems with the stock alarm clock not quite putting me in the right transfer window. But let's just go and see if it's gonna work. Right, we're gonna need an inclination change. Hasn't it looks about right to me? But I don't do space missions particularly often. There we go, we briefly got an encounter. There we go. We're even experiencing the old bug with this lander where the camera it defaults to zoomed way out when you leave map view. Let's go and do this burn to go to Minmus. Quick save. Here we go. Off to Minmus we go. So we're burning to go to Minmus. Trans-Minmus injection, you could say. Or Minmus transfer burn. Also, my brakes have been on the whole time, even though I've not got a rover with me anymore. The rover wasn't needed anyway, so that was good to get rid of that extra weight, the unnecessary weight we have. Anyway, we're coming up on the end of this burn now. Let's fine-tune it, make sure I don't have to reverse the lander. Let's see what my orbit is. 3 kilometers. I think that's a little bit too low. Oh, that's not... Okay, I'm gonna have to completely redo that. No, I was being a moron. Typical me. Anyway, let's continue to this next burn, which will be an inclination change. I think we're getting eclipsed by Kerbin. Then we'll auto time warp to the maneuver. Now, I know with better time warp, the auto time warp quite often overshoots a little bit. I'm gonna trust that it won't overshoot. Right, let's do this burn to change my inclination, and in general just get closer to Minmus, because currently I'm not even gonna pass Minmus. I remember back in the days of 2019, I even lowered the thrust of the lander by half because I was landing on Minmus and it had lower gravity. Now I know that that is less efficient to do that. We're going into a retrograde orbit, but that really doesn't matter. Let's put ourselves into low Minmus orbit. Right, up we go to Minmus. Hopefully we don't overshoot the time warp. Here we are arriving at Minmus. Right, let's arrive at Minmus. Let's also zoom in, because it's zoomed way out again. It didn't overshoot, which is good. Coming in on a retrograde orbit. The Kerbals are looking very happy. Let's go and do this burn. Here we go. Capturing around Minmus. And we have successfully captured around Minmus. Let's time warp round to the other side and start doing a landing. So there's no flats where I want to come down, so I'm just gonna come down. I'm used to landers with higher thrust than this one, so I might crash. Right, here we go. Let's start the retrograde burn. Let's also set it to surface mode. That would be good. Let's get a bit closer before restarting the engine. See if we can find the shadow. Shadow's there. Let's get a bit closer again. Coming down over Minmus on our Mun and Minmus mission. Oh, we're going a bit too slow there. As I said, I want this mission to be finished fast, so I don't have too long of a video. Here we go, we're just touching down on Minmus. There we go. We have touched down on Minmus. Let's get the Kerbals out to plant a flag and take a screenshot for real this time. As last time I forgot. Bill Kerman, out you go. You will be watching Jebediah plant the flag. And Bob Kerman. There we go. Switching to that lander always makes the camera go out really far. Plant your flag, Jebediah. There we go. Minmus. The Kerbals like to believe this is made of mint ice cream. Let's see what Jebediah thinks. The surface seems to consist of tiny crystal-like grains, very pretty but not edible. Okay, let's see what Bob thinks. He says exactly the same thing. So Bill decides to sneak a taste of it. And he confirms that it is not made of dessert products or any form of mint ice cream. Anyway, let's get the Kerbals back on the lander as we need to go. Back to Kerbin. And we nearly smashed the solar panel. Right, let's go back to Kerbin. There we go. Accelerating up to Minmus orbit. And then I will do a circularization burn. This unnecessary time warp limit again. Just gonna spam the time warp key until it goes faster. I'm not gonna do a maneuver node, as Minmus is small, I can get into orbit easily. Right, here we go. Let's enter Minmus orbit. There we go, Minmus orbit. Let's go back to Kerbin. Now the thing is, because I use the command pod, I think it's the onion command pod, the pomegranate re-entry module, that isn't very resistant to re-entry heating. So I am going to have to perform a retrograde burn at Kerbin periapsis. So I'm going to set the periapsis to be around 100 kilometers, and then I will do that burn. Right, let's go and do this burn. And here we go on the Minmus escape burn. Burns in this lander take a bit of a while because of the relatively low power engine for its weight. As you can see, this is just a perfectly normal Mun and Minmus mission with absolutely nothing wrong. Like, I've played this game for nearly 17,000 hours and I've not noticed anything wrong with the game. Even after removing all of the mods, or most of them. Let's time warp to Kerbin periapsis. Whoa, why are we going 13? Yeah. We're in a retrograde orbit of Kerbin, which is something to take note of. At least we'll be re-entering on the day side. 3-minute burn. Gonna quick save because auto time warp always overshoots. like every time when you're coming down from apoapsis. You can quite clearly see the fact I'm in a retrograde orbit by the way the Mun is going around the planet and the way the planet is rotating relative to my motion. That means the re-entry might be a little bit hotter. We also just completely overshot because of my impatience with the time warp keys. That was not even auto time warp's fault. I'm gonna do some physical warp now because I want to get this done sooner so that my video is shorter. As this is supposed to be a live commentary video, I don't want to do any, I guess, after the fact commentaries. Right, I'm gonna stop burning when my periapsis goes to around 30 kilometers altitude. And we're done. Let's time warp round and start our re-entry. Looks like we might end up... Okay, we won't be in the water. Let's rotate. No, we don't want to accelerate. Rotate around. Set the parachutes. The antennas will break off. Let's time warp away as we enter the atmosphere. I don't know if anything on the lander is going to explode, but the lander is not needed anymore, so that doesn't matter. Here we are going for re-entry. The Kerbals are probably getting a bit of motion sickness right now with the rocking back and forth. The re-entry is going quite smoothly. We're coming down over relatively flat ground, so there is no risk of the capsule rolling down a hill. Should get the parachutes coming out now. There they come. And down we come for a successful but completely normal Mun and Minmus mission. So this will be the end of the video here, so remember, if you didn't enjoy the video, to go and dislike and unsubscribe, and maybe you won't watch the next video. I will keep recording until the spacecraft has touched down, so there's a bit more time left in this video before I end. Maybe I'll just say my ending thing again after I've touched down. In fact, I will, because this is a completely normal Mun and Minmus mission, with absolutely nothing wrong and nothing weird about it. Here we are touching down. So this is the real end of the video now. Remember, if you didn't enjoy the video, to dislike and unsubscribe, and maybe you won't watch the next video.